The captured and detained Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has pleaded not guilty to narcoterrorism charges, calling himself a prisoner of war. Maduro appeared in a New York court 2 days after he and his wife were seized by US forces in Caracas. His wife, Cilia Flores, also pleaded not guilty, and her lawyers say she was injured during the arrest and has also asked for a medical examination. All right, well, let's go straight to Manuel Rapalo, who's live for us from Washington, D.C. So we were hearing earlier that there's allegations that Maduro's wife, Cilia Flores, was injured during that operation. What do we know so far, and how significant was her role exactly in Venezuela?
It was certainly a dramatic first day. We can see that from that reporting from our colleague Kristen Salumi in New York, with Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores appearing before a judge early on Monday. Regarding the injuries that Flores reportedly sustained during the U.S. Special Forces operation that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores, she was seen entering the courtroom with bandages around her forehead and around her temple as well. We also believe that she may have also sustained injuries to her ribs as well as other bruising, according to her lawyer. Now, Cilia Flores is a fairly well-known name inside of Venezuela. She's a very influential figure and politically important in Venezuela. She's held real positions of authority in the country. And interestingly enough, she's not regarded as the first lady of Venezuela, but rather the first combatant of Venezuela. This is because in 2013, when Nicolas Maduro took power in the country, he said famously that he believed that the term First Lady was too aristocratic and instead gave her the term First Combatant. But again, while the name Cilia Flores may not have been a household name outside of Venezuela until this last weekend, her indictment under narcoterrorism charges alongside of her husband, Nicolas Maduro, has certainly thrust her into the spotlight and made her a central figure in this case.
Right, and Trump officials have been holding this classified intelligence briefing with congressional leaders on that Venezuela operation. How is this being seen across the political divide on Capitol Hill?
This was a classified congressional briefing that took place that ran well into the evening on Monday. This involved Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting with top-level congressional leaders from both sides of the political aisle here in the United States. As you can imagine, the reactions have been mixed. There has been support for the military operation from supporters of President Trump, like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who referred to the operation as decisive and just, but also, as you can imagine, as to be expected, many Democratic leaders expressed their concerns over what might come next, what sort of precedent this might set. We heard from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, senator from New York, who said that the briefing, though extensive, left him with more questions than with answers. Have a listen.
This is not a regime change. This is a demand for change of behavior by a regime. The interim government is stood up now, and we are hopeful that they will be able to correct their action. They cannot participate with narco-terrorists and very dangerous international criminal organizations that harm and target Americans, frankly, and traffic all of these dangerous drugs into our country, that do all this great harm to our country. They cannot continue that activity.
I did not receive any assurances that we would not try to do the same thing in other countries. And in conclusion, when the United States engages in this kind of regime change and so-called nation building, it always ends up hurting the United States. I left the briefing feeling that it would again.
Right, and Manuel, it doesn't stop, of course, with Venezuela, because Donald Trump has also threatened Venezuela's neighbor, Colombia.
That's right. These are the words of President Trump. We should note that just on Sunday evening aboard Air Force One, on his way from his home in Mar-a-Lago, Florida, returning to Washington, D.C., President Trump was speaking to reporters and turned his attention toward Colombia, saying that Colombia is a sick country run by a, quote, sick man, referring to Colombian President Gustavo Petro. He called him, suggested that President Petro is someone who likes producing cocaine, that he has cocaine mills and cocaine factories, and that he likes to sell cocaine to the United States. When asked whether or not there could be a military operation in Colombia by the United States, President Trump said that that sounded good. Now, President Petro has rejected these characterizations and rejected the accusations against Colombia's counter-narcotics operations. But let's take a listen to what Colombia's Interior Minister Armando Benedetti had to say in response.
El gobierno de Colombia.
The Colombian government, through the Interior Ministry and the Justice Ministry, informs the United States government through one of the intelligence agencies that we'll continue coordinating and cooperating in the fight against drug trafficking based on intelligence and the technology to destroy laboratories and criminal structures in the camps.
So clearly it is concerning to hear the President of the United States issuing these types of warnings, not only to Colombia, but essentially to all leaders across Latin America, essentially saying that the new strategy by the United States, the new way of doing business and diplomacy in the continent is do as we say or face the consequences. It's difficult to know how much we should be reading into President Trump's statements. On the one hand, this could just be his characteristic style of harsh diplomacy, but there is a real scenario where Colombia could be the next stage for America's next military operation in the region. This is part of the concerns that were voiced by Democratic lawmakers during that congressional briefing on Capitol Hill, is the type of precedent that this could set. Now that with using as Venezuela as an example, could this just be a preview to other military operations in the region in the not too distant future?
All right, thank you very much for that update. Manuel Rapalo there in Washington, D.C.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.